Hi, today I'm going to talk about vectors and scalar quantities, and I'm just going to very simply distinguish between what vectors and scalars are and why they're important. So scalars and vectors, it's actually it's a simple idea. Scalars are any measurement with a magnitude, and by saying magnitude, I basically mean a number, right? So if we take a look at the examples here, mass would be, when you get on the scale and you get your weight basically, and 60 kilograms, right? And the magnitude that we're talking about is basically this is the magnitude. The number 60 is the magnitude. And same with temperature. Say your room is 27 degrees Celsius, the magnitude would be 27. So this is what I'm talking about when I say magnitude. Scalar quantities have a magnitude and a magnitude only, whereas when we're talking about vector quantities, they have a magnitude and a direction. So a magnitude with a number and a direction. So basically, say we talk about weight or force in physics, we would say 60 newtons of force, but that wouldn't be adequate information to be a vector quantity. You need to add a direction, so you have to say either left or right, or up or down, or west or north or east or south, or some sort of thing that denotes direction, and that's usually done with positive and negative signs, and a positive is given a certain direction, and then the negative would be the exact opposite. So if a positive value means it's going to the left, then a negative value would obviously mean it's going to the right, and the same thing applies in opposite directions. So that's basically what it is. The number is a magnitude, and there's going to be whatever other thing that denotes direction, whether that's the plus and minus, or an explicit statement saying it's going to the left or right or up or down or any direction. That's very, very important, and it's very easy to just kind of forget about scalars and vectors, but it's really important when it comes down to doing calculations and understanding certain situations when they're written in numbers, right? Obviously, a positive 60 newtons would be different from a negative 60 newtons. And when you're visualizing it, it's very important, because a positive 60 newtons with a negative 60 newtons, the net force would be 0. But if you don't take into consideration the direction, you would just think that, oh, the sum is 120 newtons, and so the resultant force is 120 newtons, when in reality it should be 0. So things like that are very, very important when it comes to calculations as you move on in physics. So the distinguishment between scalars and vectors are very, very, very important. They're very simple. It's not something that you can get confused with. Scalars only have magnitude, and vectors have a direction and a magnitude. But it's just very simple it's very easy to forget when you're doing more complex calculations, and it's something that you need to know. So a common confusion, or a common thing, or the first thing that you learn in physics most of the times, is the difference between distance and displacement. And if we think about distance, it's really a distance is a scalar quantity, by the way. Distance is a scalar quantity, and the displacement is a vector quantity. So if that makes sense for you, great. But distance basically deals with, say, 60 kilometers. That's a distance. But for displacement, it would mean 60 kilometers west, or positive or negative 60 kilometers. So I'll show you what that means. And this interpretation of distance and displacement is very important. So when we're talking about the distance between a point A and B, it really depends on the route that you take. So say you go around like this to get to point B, right? And that would mean that you have to calculate the length, or that would mean that the distance, to find the distance, you would have to just follow this path and know how much distance you traveled on this path, right? Same thing goes for when you travel like this to B. The distance will now be different from when you have traveled the first route and the second route. So that's the distance traveled between A and B. Whereas if you're talking about displacement, you would be talking about the shortest distance between point A and B. So you would only look at this. Oh, sorry. you'd only look at this. And so that would be the displacement. And that's what the difference is. This distance looks at the entire course taken and the distance covered through the route that you take to get from A to B. And the displacement is basically the exact distance, the shortest distance between point A and point B, the starting point and the final point. And when you're denoting this, you have to include a direction. You have to remember that you have to include a direction. And consequently from this, speed, something that we're really familiar with, and when you're going on your car, you would see speed. Then you have to know that it's dealing with distance and it doesn't have a direction, whereas velocity would be displacement over time, and that would have a direction. So you would have to say positive or negative velocity, or going west, east, southwest. Sorry. But you get the point. So that's the distinguishment between scalars and vectors. They're very simple. It's only magnitude, and it's only the difference between magnitude and a magnitude plus a direction. And it's not something that you can really forget. It's not something that you can get confused, I think, but it's something that you really tend to forget sometimes. So make sure when you get a value in physics, make sure you really kind of interpret it and know that it's a scalar or a vector quantity. And if you're unsure, make sure you ask about it, because it will be a very decisive factor when it comes to calculations. So hope that helped. If you want more physics or math or chemistry videos on IB, for the IB curriculum, leave a comment below on what you would like me to cover. I am a student as well, so I might not know a certain topic, or I might not have covered it yet, but I'll try my best to talk about a certain topic if you leave it in the comments below. So thanks for watching. I hope it helped.